The Kelermorph. A shiny uniform. The old officer looked down his nose at me. Long he stared, seeming to be waiting for some form of reaction. But I was not an idiot. I knew the game, so I stood to attention. The perfect image of compliance and martial discipline. He tutted audibly before proceeding. "Did you hear me?" "Yes, sir," says I. "Then why are you not answering my question, Lieutenant?" "I shall repeat the question for you. Did you sign up for the uniform? Think it would get you more attention?" I stare over his head. I bark. "No, sir! I wish to serve the state, sir!" "But if this is the case," says he, "why did you not apply to the Guard? Why the Planetary Defense Force?" "I love my home, sir. I wished to defend it personally, not be sent across the stars to who knows where, never knowing if my home was all right." I had the drama. He answers, "A worthy response. How long did it take you to formulate that particular palisade?" "Sir?" "You can lie to the fillies you bed every night. You can lie to your superiors. You can even lie to yourself. But I know you. I have watched you with endless disappointment. That such skill was granted to such an unworthy receptacle." And there it is. He's starting to lose his wind. He'll then throw a few accusations. But I know he can't do anything without a confession. Ha! He can go whistle for it. I will not be hoist on my own petard. I wait him out. And here it comes. "I've noted your history, boy. I know what colour runs in your veins. And it isn't the Emperor's holy red. It's the little things, you see, Lieutenant, that give you away. The fact that you only take up contests when live fire exercises are in the offing. Your skill with a pistol is commendable. Perhaps the best we have ever seen. But to have it wasted on the likes of you." He looks like he wants to spit. He wants to use the word, the C word, but he cannot. Because if it falls out of his mouth, if he speaks it, then I have cause. I can challenge him. So he dances around the word. Coward. Yet even he is scared of me, you see. Even he will not face me in a duel. Not that I am surprised, of course. None want to face me. A few did early on, when I was starting out. But now, it would be a death sentence. He sneers, he huffs and puffs, and I wait him out. He goes on a bit more, but still dances that strange vague dance. He so wants to use the word, but cannot. And it is over. I snap a perfect salute as I then twist and march out of the room and out of his unit. Transferred to Central, where I will be lauded to the high heavens. My every night will be carousing, warmly snuggled with my most recent conquest. As long as I keep to my regime, I will want for nothing. Because he was absolutely 100% on the nose. I did indeed join the Planetary Defense Force to avoid enlisting in the Guard. And I did absolutely join up for the dashing cut of the thread. Because in that uniform, with my features, There was not a woman alive who could resist my charms. Oh, I had done my homework. I had looked at the details as I always did, because, unlike so many others, I was professionally lazy. Always had been. Now some marvelled at me if I were ever in my cups and blurted it out. None would believe I was being anything but ironic. Lazy? Pabaland a quickshot? Impossible. For every morning I was there, blatantly. Jogging, lifting, then shooting. I had it down to 4 hours a day now. But this was all the bare minimum, you see. I had been born to luxury. Could have spent my days just feasting and drinking, making very little of myself. Yet I had seen how this had taken a toll on some of my contemporaries. Already twice the size they should be, always red-eyed and slack-jawed. Already firmly digging their own graves. Yet I was not given to work hard. So I understood one thing. Sometimes you have to work hard to avoid hard work. Thus I gained biological advice from the apothecaries, the exact amounts to maximize my abilities, the exact amount of exercise to maintain the peak of bodily speed, the things I could or could not do to maintain my edge. And I did everything else that was on the table. I did not take stims or other combat narcotics. I did not indulge in fug or drift, the most popular recreations on our world. I imbibed amasec, but never so much as it took away my edge. And after those 4 hours every day of shooting, 1 hour of very pointed exercise, I had the rest of my days to myself. Because nobody of sound mind challenged me. I had my bunk cleaned by my squad, had my meals prepared by the mess. I had my guard duties perpetually swapped in such a confusing way that none really understood that I did only 1 in 10. Because nobody wanted to be on the receiving end of a duel. Oh, they could refuse, of course. But then, they would be called cowards for the rest of their days, even if it was only telling themselves this. And I did what I wanted. Even in the PDF, I lived the life. Because I never, ever missed a practice session. I was lethality itself. 1 gun or 2, it made no difference. That had added an hour to my regime to maintain this. But I reckoned that 3 hours only would be seen as too little. For some reason, the extra hour was all. Because I could slay as easily as a Marine, is what some said. I was fast, always had been. But then I concentrated on accuracy. There is little point in being the first with their gun out if you cannot hit the broadside of a Grox. And now, 10 years later, I was the most lethal duelist, the most storied pistolier, and all of Cacus for a minute. Of course, the planet was more officially called Journey's End. My transfer approved by nobility of the highest order, or as I like to call them, fans. Of course, old Farabras, the officer I had just encountered, was right. I had indeed bribed a few officials so that they would tell me when live fire drills and exercises were to take place. And I did indeed make myself very busy in the arenas during those sorry months. And my fans protected me. But with all his cleverness, all his anger, he still could not touch me. Alas, he eventually had the last laugh, I imagine. because it was less than 3 days after my arrival at Central that it happened. A full-scale insurrection, and this was ground zero. It was almost instantly pandemonium, and it was the worst thing I could imagine. An actual war. And everyone now looked to me to stand out. The last thing I intended. Yet my past was a rod from my own back. I could not avoid it any longer. I was thrust into the very thick of it. Despite every attempt to transfer, switch, or avoid, the new soldier around me had heard my name, but I had not gotten the time to really impress on them the fear they should hold for me. I had only blown off one head, and it was not enough. And so, when I was ordered to the front, I knew I could not argue. I would have to do my bit. So I did all I could think of to defray as much risk as possible. And I imperiously demanded the right to be used to the fullest, not wasted on rushes and cannon fodder work. And, due to my reputation, my new officers agreed. Over the next weeks, I was left behind on most missions, most postings. But then I knew that I would get odd high-stakes encounters. And statistically, this was the safer route. One can so easily get killed in a real battle. And, inexorably, the day came. For it seemed that the rebels had a sharpshooter of their own, and he was proving to be a great problem. So, of course, they sent me in. Surrounded by a corps of 10 hard-bitten soldiers, I stalked into the region he had last been seen, and I went to work. While the rest of them took shots, advanced, made loud movements to gain attention, I stalked behind. When they were jumped by a motley rabble of these insurrectionists, I moved out and proved my worth. I had to fight every instinct in my body. I had to bite down on my lower lip so hard it drew blood. And that is what sprang me into action. For the longest time, I just sat there, watching. I was frozen. But I knew, if I did not act, then I would be busted down to a rancor and thrown into the meat grinder. So I bit down, and then moved. But, to my astonishment, when it was happening, I barely noticed the fear anymore. It was like being down the range. I saw a target, and one or both of my hands pointed, and a head came apart. Instinctive reactions that were of benefit. The hours each day firing had me well set to excel. I only hoped my uniform master lines of urine I had let escape before biting down and springing forward. Yes, I pissed myself. The rebels were picked apart as I slew them in quick succession. We then moved fast. I led the way. More like I led them all away. The sergeant balked and whispered that we should loiter here, that the idea was to gain the attention of this pistolier of the enemy. Yet I countered with the only thing I had. I said that if it needs to hunt us, it is more likely to arrive. Rubbish, of course. Yet he did not have the rank or will to argue with me down here in the hellscape of the battle. We rushed into another group of them, and again I went to work, trying not to think at all, allowing my automatic reactions to carry me through. But I did too well. Slew too many of them too quickly. And this drew out exactly the response I'd been trying to avoid. Because it arrived. The first we knew it was here was when the back two of our squad fell forward, holes in the center of their heads. I rolled and got into cover immediately, and I watched. I watched it take down my entire squad, one after the other. They were butchered. Shots coming from impossible angles, through broken windows across streets. One shot was even bounced off a burning tank into the gut of a squaddy next to me. Now alone, I found a doorway and ducked inside. A winding stair led me to a huge opening, a theatre. I slunk around the back of its last seats, hiding in the dark, but not sitting still. That could be death. I knew it had better senses than I. It had to, for it to pull off those shots. I could have done them, perhaps, but it seemed so effortless to my enemy. And then I heard it. Its boots were resounding on the boards of the stage. I had never heard it before, so this was on purpose. And there it stood in the center of the stage, a man, but with a strange coloured head. Gang dyes, I supposed. A long poncho over its frame, grimy and dishevelled, but there it stood, bold as brass and utterly fearless. The exact opposite of myself. And, for the first time in my life, it happened. I understood what courage was, because I stood up. I could not believe I was doing this, like a possession of some foul spirit, or remembering a drunken memory. I moved without even ordering it so. I stood in the middle aisle, looking directly up at it. And damn its eyes, it just stepped back and waved an arm to me. It invited me to the stage. And so I walked. I slowly and dramatically scaled the stairs at the side of the stage and walked toward it. All throughout my mind was screaming at me to run, to hide, to wait for it all to blow over. None would dare call me a coward. None. Hide. But my rebellious legs had doomed me. And now my hands betrayed me too, for my arms now hovered out from my side. My hands only inches from the holsters of my pistols. And it was like looking into a mirror, for it then did exactly the same. Our eyes locked, but I could not hold its gaze. Inside its black eyes I heard the screams of a million years, a billion lies. It felt like looking into the very eyes of evil. And I cracked. And my arms moved of their own volition, and it began. My pistols rose a hair before his, and I shot all of my bullets in one salvo. It ducked and twisted, most of them flying over its head, but at least one tagged it as my opponent dived backwards, firing himself. I had almost moved by instinct, running to my side, continuing my fire. Then the click, click, click. I slid behind a huge prop and reloaded in less than a second. Instead of stalking, I bounded over the top of the prop, and he was not there, nowhere to be seen. But the patch of liquid on the floor stated that I indeed had hit him. But perhaps it was the lighting, perhaps a strain. Its liquid seemed to run purple, not red. I rolled and came up and fired at a curtain that had moved. I thought he was there, but the click behind me was all I needed to know where he was truly. I flung myself left, and its bullets fired into the air where I had been. I turned, and we both ran almost in a circle, firing at each other. And at its end, we both stopped as we heard the exact same noise, the click, click, click of emptied chambers. We were both out. We both stopped. I looked at it, and that is when I saw the third arm come out of the poncho. I did not see it fire, but I did see the ceiling. It had shot me in the head, I fell backwards. I could not move. I heard its boots calmly resounding as it slowly stepped to stand above me. It held a picked caster. It flashed again and again as the thing smiled at me. Then it pointed that last arm at me again. How did it have 3 arms? Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the factions, forces, and units of the Warhammer 40k setting, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace. There is only time for war. And before we get into it, we also have channels for mythology and natural history now, links in the description. And we also now have super thanks, so like, subscribe, and throw me a coin if you enjoy the video more than usual. Or Patreon, of course. Now, let us proceed. For today, we are to discuss a relatively new entrant to the battlefields of the dark future. An assassin and gunslinger extraordinaire. Few can match its skills. Fewer still can match its ruthlessness. For it is not guided by human sensibilities, never given to pity or mercy, even on the subconscious level. For it is a thing of alien form and mind. Of course, I can only be speaking of the Kelermorph of the Genestealer cults. It is a hero of the Genestealer cults across the galaxy, a pattern thrown up on world after world. Like so many of the spawn of the Tyranids and their Genestealer cults, it is insidious and ubiquitous. But let us get to the bones of the matter. And so, as usual, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, the Kelermorph. The Kelermorph is a special Genestealer hybrid who serves as a hero figure for Genestealer cults and uses his legendary prowess as a warrior and gunslinger to spread sedition and revolution on cult-infested Imperial worlds. To the oppressed masses of the Genestealer cult, the Kelermorph is a figure of folk legend, a revolutionary hero battling the uncaring cruelty of authoritarian rule. To the enemy, he is a figure of dread, a hated anarch who seeks to tear down the foundations of civilization. In reality, the Kelermorph is something else entirely, a bioform created for the specific purpose of exploiting mortals' psychology. A cold-blooded killer in the guise of a legendary gunfighter whose actions inspired generations of sedition and revolution. Smeared across the walls of countless underhive catacombs and high-rise spires is the same graffitied image of a cloaked 3-armed figure wielding a set of custom auto-stub pistols. He always stands defiant in the face of impossible odds. Tales spread of this masked hero, a litany of impossible deeds and feats of supernatural martial prowess. These stories differ from world to infested world, but they retain a core of similarity. Spinning his Liberator auto-stubs with supernatural dexterity, the Kelermorph fills his enemies with bullets, mowing down scores of soldiers in moments. When faced with armored foes or war vehicles, the gunslinger simply spins the chambers of his pistols and calmly fires once more. In moments, the target explodes in a hail of metal. Such tales might sound fanciful, but there is a core of truth to all of them. The Kelermorph is a latter-day refinement of the 3rd-generation hybrid cycle, produced from the finest genetic strains of the local population and gifted with hypersensory powers that allow him to perceive the world in unusually accurate detail. Rapid-firing neurons in the Kelermorph's predatory brain allow a supernatural reaction time. The Biomorph's enemies seem to move in slow motion as he aims and blasts them off their feet one by one. Enhanced pheromonal senses and thermoceptive vision allow for pinpoint marksmanship even in pitch darkness, while a refined vestibular system provides a superhuman level of balance and coordination, the source of the Kelermorph's uncanny aim. These creatures are biocrafted to be the heroic face of their cult. Their influence upon a fractured society is a terrifying sign of the gene-stealer patriarch's growing mastery of the human psyche, an ability to manipulate mass psychology. Pox-faced gangs and upper hive dandies alike style themselves upon this figure, seeking the trail of the mysterious worm-form symbol, and in doing so, falling into the embrace of the cult. Indentured workers risk their lives to smuggle traces of lethal chemical elements out of the sprawling arms factories in which they toil away their existence. They fashion these rare elements into custom bullets, slugs of metal tipped with depleted volunium that can pierce power armor and even the hulls of light tanks. The crafting of such munitions often douses the maker in deadly waves of radiation, but they willingly accept their fate, making a final pilgrimage to present their gift to the hero of the revolution before succumbing to the sickness ravaging their bodies. Such is the devotion that the Kelermorph engenders, for he is the physical embodiment of the freedom falsely promised by the followers of the Star Children. End quote. Ah, the Kelermorph. Now, I have never had the pleasure of facing this rapscallion upon the field of combat. Yet, a pity, and one I hope to remedy at the first opportunity that is afforded me, because I vaguely remember the original Genestealer cult release, all those many, many moons ago. So I was elated when they returned to the lore and the tabletop. And for me, it is the smaller units, the heroes and specialists, like the Kelermorph, that, in my limited and humble opinion, make a release, breathes life into an army. For I have often bemoaned some releases being X-boxes of standard troops that can be configured multiple ways, like the Fire Slayers when they first came to Age of Sigmar. Although they are awesome, and I need remind none of my fixation with line troops and the standard units over the heroes and HQs, I still feel that they make the army. They are the cherry on the top, but also they add flavor. It is in the heroes and the specialists that the real soul of an army comes together. And in the Kelermorph, we see the metal and meter of the Genestealer cults. This one figure above all others in that newish range showed the striking difference between the Genestealer cult and the Tyranids proper. For the cults are a true synthesis between the alien and the human host population. The Kelermorph is, more than anything else, a public relations stunt. It comes to a battlefield and hunts down heroes, culls entire units of enemies one by one in quick succession, and breathes new life into the cult units around it. Cut down to one word, it is morale. The Kelermorph is there to prop up and expand the morale of the forces around it. And that is something so alien, so separate to the activities of the Tyranids, that it clearly shows the difference. For in the grim darkness of the far future, it is not always about strength, power, ability, or numbers. Many a confrontation is truly won by will. And the Kelermorph stiffens the will of all the Genestealer cults around it. Thank you for your precious time. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.